Welcome into the first edition of the Pitcast. I'm Ben Kinney, joined by Zach Case. Zach, good to be here, even though it's not in person. Would have preferred it to be in person in Oswego, but, things going on that can't really control that.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I appreciate you for inviting me in and sending me this idea. I really liked it, and can't wait to see what we do with this. I wish I was in Oswego, but you know what? My house isn't that bad, so I've been hanging out here. But
Now, we mentioned that Oswego, we both go to SUNY Oswego, and that's kind of where we got the idea from. We wanted to be at WTOP during this time, the TV station out there, but again, events of the day will prevail over that, unfortunately.
yeah, I know. It's tough. I've been missing sports lately, and luckily NASCAR has kind of been the only thing that's been staying relevant, which has been awesome. But yeah, I've been hanging out in Rochester. That's where I'm from, Rochester, New York, and my first year at Oswego, and I can't wait for many more. But I can't wait to be back.
Yeah, my first year as well, and I'm on the other side of the state in Glens Falls. So, yeah, completely different climate there, and everything going on right now. It's actually completely different here than from what I hear in Rochester, numbers wise with coronavirus.
hmm
Unfortunately, we're getting hit pretty hard right now. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah. Now, let's get into today's episode. The first thing we're going to bring up is the return of Matt Kenseth, who will step into the 42 car when NASCAR is set to return on the 17th. He will be replacing Kyle Larson, who, as you remember, was at first suspended and then fired from Chip Ganassi Racing for things he said during the iRacing Invitational a few weeks ago. He last ran full-time in 2018. Now, Zach, were you expecting Kenseth to be the pick for Chip Ganassi?
Uh, I would say I didn't have him number one on my list. I was kind of leaning towards Ross Chastain, especially after they announced Ryan Newman was coming back. Newman talked, that's our next topic, but Newman talked briefly about how he was feeling ready, and I was like, okay, Ross Chastain moving on over to a different team. But I think Matt Kenseth is a good pick up there. Definitely could develop that team. The only shocking thing is, of course, he's a little older, hasn't been around lately, like you talked about. He hasn't ran full time since 2018. So obviously, I would think a young gun would be a better fit, especially next to Kurt Busch. But those two were two teammates together back in Roush Fenway, and I think it'll be a good fit there in that camp for the 42 car.
Yeah, and 21 seasons full-time for Kenseth, running 665 races, 39 wins, 181 top fives. The 2000 Rookie of the Year, 2003 Winston Cup Series champion, and he won the 500 in 2009 and 2012. Now, I would have liked to have seen Chastain finish out the year in the Cup Series. Do you feel that he could use the Xfinity Series to develop a little more, or do you feel that he is ready to hop into a full-time Cup Series ride?
I think the only problem with Chastain is he hasn't really been in a car that has the power. Like we talked about, I think it's JD Motorsports with Flex Seal on the car, and of course his watermelon stuff. But honestly, I think Ross Chastain could use better equipment, and I think he's proven that in the races he did race for Roush Fenway that he had a good ride. And of course, Roush Fenway isn't the best team out there anymore, but they're still a top team. And I think moving forward he could develop an Xfinity and a better ride. But I think it's time for him to make the step in the Cup and maybe in a lower team, but maybe he could get a higher profile team. He's definitely got the personality for it. So.
Now, we mentioned Ryan Newman returning from injury. Of course, we go back to February, and I remember watching the Daytona 500 in my dorm room, still at Oswego, eating a burger from Mackin, Mackin world famous Mackin burger right there, and watching this race. And I honestly thought that I had seen Ryan Newman killed when I saw that car flip. I had never seen a flip like that ever. And the worst thing pops into your head, especially when, all right, it's 20 seconds in, the window net's still not down. And usually window net goes down. And that's not the first time that he had flipped at Daytona either. If you remember
Yeah.
2003, he flipped in the
Long.
infield.
I wasn't that old, but I remember seeing the race. But
Yeah.
I instantly thought back to the time when Austin Dillon went into the cat fence, back
Mm-hmm.
at Daytona too. That's what popped through my mind when I was watching it. But honestly, I'm happy that he's a tough guy. We all know that, but obviously, it's happy to see that he can return now. Uh, and the best part is we touch on this now. The eligibility for the 2020 championship is still up to table for both drivers, so that's good news for both of them. If Matt
Only
Kenseth does want to go for a championship,
right, only 3 actual races, have been run up to this point. Daytona, California, and Las Vegas, I believe, have been run up to this point. So usually by now we're getting close to the halfway mark, and the playoff field is starting to get more well thought out and more visible. But
yeah,
as of right now, we're still only 3 races into this 2020 campaign.
yeah. I don't know exactly what race we would be on this weekend. Well, no, we went to Dover last weekend, so
Right.
obviously we just went to Talladega in the Pro Invitational Series, but I don't know. I was getting ready to go to Watkins Glen here in August, and hopefully we can still go back there. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely a weird time, and maybe we can get this turned around here rather quickly, which it seems like they will end up doing that.
And that's the hope. And we'll get more into that here in a little bit, into the new schedule that's come out in the last week. But first, I want to move into Formula One. 2021 budget plan has been changed a little bit. Budget cap for teams, the maximum amount that teams could spend per season was supposed to be 175 million starting in the 2021 season. That has been reduced down to 145 million to combat economic effects placed on F1 caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Your thoughts on that, Zach?
Well, I personally don't watch a lot of Formula One. I know it's a pretty expensive sport, but reading up on it lately, I know there's a few teams that don't put a lot of money into it compared to like your Ferrari and your top teams, your Red Bull racing team. So obviously, there's teams that are losing a lot of money right now when they're not racing. So they need to maybe even out that playing field, which I think for Formula One, I've always known that there's top drivers and there's lower teams, and maybe if you make that playing field, you make that gap a little closer, there'll be better racing. So I'm for it personally. It's a tough time right now, but reading into it more, I know that eventually they're going to go back racing in July in Australia. That's the report that has been coming out about that. But I think the COVID stuff definitely is affecting Formula One right now.
Yeah, and that's first weekend in July in Austria, the Austrian Grand Prix, not Australia, in Austria.
Yeah, my bad. My apologies.
All good. And you mentioned the gap between teams, and ever since I was younger watching F1, it's always been the top teams have been Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull. And McLaren more so now that you have Lewis Hamilton as the top driver for them, winning championships the last 2-3 seasons. You've really seen Ferrari start to move back a little more, even though, they still have that talent. They're not as powerful as McLaren and Red Bull are nowadays. But I think that you will start to see the lower end teams, like you said, start to move up now that there is that gap being closed in how much teams can actually spend. Because you look at how much Ferrari spends on their vehicles, and well, they can afford to do it. You look at how much just a regular car retails for. You're getting close to 6 figures for a sports car. How much they can spend on their Formula One cars, which to Ferrari, Formula One is what Chevy is to NASCAR. That's the top of the line ride.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to put as much money in as you can. All right, moving on. Here from F1, we're going into the iRacing Pro Invitational Series. That has been pretty good for NASCAR during this time where everything shut down. 7 races. So over the last 7 weeks, they've been online racing through this iRacing service, and they've been streaming them on Fox and getting over 1 million viewers per weekend for these races. And what's cool is, and I like to see this, is they don't have just Cup drivers that are in the Cup Series today. You see Dale Jr., you see Bobby Labonte. I know in the dirt series the other night they had Elliott Sadler, who was my favorite driver growing up. They're bringing back all these guys that are retired. Even Jeff Gordon last or the weekend before at Talladega ran.
Yeah.
And that'll help bring the fans in more, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing I've noticed with the broadcast and the stuff they've been doing, there's plenty of different series that have been running under the NASCAR circumstance. The fact that Saturday nights they've been doing Saturday Night Thunder, which brings in the Xfinity, the Truck Series, the ARCA guys. There's been a couple people from the Pinty Series up in Canada that've been running, which allows them to show their stuff. And exactly, no one knows iRacing. It's basically an online subscription simulator that puts you in a car that's equal to everyone else. So we're talking about Timmy Hill, who hasn't been really in good equipment in his whole career, and now he's running up front. He's won a race at Texas, and it just shows the racing skill compared to these other drivers like William Byron, who's in the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports. So I think it's a great series, and I think we need to talk about North Wilkesboro next week, and I think that'll be fun.
Absolutely. And the last time an actual NASCAR race was run in North Wilkesboro, 1996, and the winner of that race was Jeff Gordon. So you think about that and the fans that'll draw in once they go back, even if it's virtual, to North Wilkesboro, the nostalgia effect of going to North Wilkesboro for these drivers.
Yeah, and then we talked about like Dale Jr. put in a lot of work with iRacing. They worked together on getting that track enough where they could render it and get it to the exact specifications needed to make it into a track. They've talked about it for years about going back there in general. But I think it would be a great experience. That's going to be Saturday night on Fox. And I'm going to be honest, the best part about the broadcast is Clint Boyer for me. I think that's the best part about the series.
Yep.
He's a great personality, and I think he'll really make a great broadcaster someday when he does retire. But it's been fun to watch, and it's definitely something I look forward to at the end of the week every week. So
the poor guy can't catch a break. He cannot catch a break. Week in and week out, he cannot catch a break. It's just like real life for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we mentioned, William Byron. He's won the last 3 races. Timmy Hill won at Texas. And these are guys who you haven't really heard winning actual Cup Series races. Timmy Hill has been in the series for, gosh, it has to be 3 or 4 years now at least.
Yeah, I think 2013 or 2014 at least.
Yeah, and we mentioned talking about Chastain, the quality of rides that these guys are getting, and racing in iRacing is actually showing that it's not about skill, it's about the ride, and it's about the team you have that can build the car. And I think racing on iRacing these last few weekends have actually shown this more so.
Yeah, definitely. I think I used to actually do iRacing back when I was, I think, freshman in high school, and I enjoyed it a lot to the fact that I was basically a race car driver for a little bit. But yeah, I definitely like the fact that these guys are getting opportunities to put themselves off there, like Garrett Smithley, for example, who spends a lot of time streaming on Twitch. Landon Castle, who actually has a full-time sponsorship for the whole series, just for his car. And those two guys specifically don't have a lot of big-time rides, so I think it really shows for them, and they're getting a lot of publicity out of it. So I think it's a good series, and I can't wait to get back to real racing, but I think it's been a great alternative right now during these tough times.
Now, looking at real racing, NASCAR has released an interim schedule, if you will, for the first 2 weeks back, starting the 17th of May. They are going to be racing at Darlington and Charlotte. Now, the reasoning behind this, if I'm reading this correctly, is that they wanted to be within driving distance of race shops. Obviously, a lot of race teams are headquartered in Charlotte or in Raleigh in North Carolina, so Charlotte is an obvious choice. Darlington in South Carolina, just over the border there. from Charlotte, not too far away. They don't want to house these guys overnight because of everything that's going on, Zach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to Darlington back when I was down in South Carolina at Myrtle Beach, and that facility is good enough to be able to come in for a day, run a race, and leave. They talked about not having any practice, just doing a qualifying lap right off the trailer, which really is interesting in the fact that maybe a small race team gets it right the first time, and they're starting up front, and they'll have a good opportunity to run the race. But if you want to, we'll dive into the schedule here. That is starting, I think, May 17th. I
Yep.
think it's the first race. They're going to go to Darlington, and then they're going to come back on Wednesday. But the cool part is it brings in Xfinity and the Truck Series. They'll get back to racing too. North Carolina, a couple weeks, made race shops essential, which means they're practically building their cars right now for these races. But I think the Wednesday night races, I think will actually turn into a normal thing. Maybe moving into future seasons, I think it's a great idea. Maybe a doubleheader where you come in on a Tuesday and you stay a whole week. That could be a little long for a race team, but I really like the idea of having a Wednesday night race, maybe at like a Martinsville or a short track midweek, and then you take the weekend off for say. But it's prime time. I think there's going to be a lot of people watching, but I really like the schedule right now.
And NASCAR, at least for now, is going to be the only show in town. It's going to be the only thing to watch, live sport wise. So everyone's going to be watching this, and this is NASCAR's time to shine. And people have talked about following, the whole Car Tomorrow backfall and that whole plan backfiring in 2008. It's been a constant decline in viewers and fans for NASCAR. And to me, I feel that this is NASCAR's time to reclaim those viewers and claim even more. And I think that NASCAR will actually really benefit from this fan base wise.
Yeah, I think so too. You got, I'm looking at the schedule right now. You got the Cup cars on Fox on Sunday at 3:30. That's a good time slot with nothing going on, especially on a national TV station. And then you got the 600 also on Fox at 6 o'clock, May 24th. So those are two big races, of course. Those are the regular distance. But talking about the midweek races, 500 kilometers, and then another 500-kilometer race on FS1, 8 o'clock, and a 7:30 for the Cup Series. So
right in prime time.
Those are going to be interesting. Yeah, especially I think those will be great races under the lights too. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I am too. Now, these races are going to count towards the point standings, are they not?
Yeah, they will. So I think I don't know. I don't really know what I think about it moving forward about like, okay, this is gonna like obviously we're gonna probably crown a champion come November at Phoenix. But in reality, like this championship, I don't know if it's gonna mean more for drivers or it's gonna mean less of the fact that you've taken 7 weeks off. I don't know if it would feel like a championship. There's talks in other sports that people are talking about that the same way. So I don't know what drivers' reaction will be, but I think it'll be a fun time for the fans.
Right. And even though they aren't going to have fans in the racetracks, I was talking to my dad about this the other night. You don't need it's not like a sport like hockey or baseball where you feed off the energy. You can't really get the fans' energy when you're in a race car going 200 miles per hour around an oval. So the fans aren't really a big part in playing into the excitement for the drivers.
Yeah, I definitely am. I pulled up the chase grid here. Joey Logano with 2 wins, Alex Bowman with 1, and Denny Hamlin, of course, with 1. Those are the 3 drivers that maybe had a little more momentum. I would say Joey Logano, obviously, with more momentum than anyone else. Maybe Hamlin too. Bowman. Where did Bowman win?
I think he was Vegas.
Auto Club, right?
Or yes, you're right. Auto Club. It was Auto Club.
So Alex Bowman isn't really a guy that I really go to as a guy that's a top tier NASCAR driver. I think he's, of course, a good driver, but I look at Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin, who maybe are championship favorites. Both of them with wins already. But then you have Kevin Harvick, who has 164 points, the most points out of any driver. So obviously there are drivers that are already, I think, in the chase that are ready to go for the championship, that are already looking to be ahead of everyone else. But just looking through the list, you got Matt DiBenedetto in the 21 car. He's in 10th right now. Eric Almirola in the 10 car. I think that's a contract year for him. So there's a lot of guys that I'm looking down the list that have started out the year pretty well and have to get back into that groove.
Absolutely. All right. So looking forward to the next episode. We're going to be recapping the iRacing Pro Invitational Series race at North Wilkesboro from Saturday night. We're going to take a look at some more recent news, and we're going to be previewing the upcoming races at Darlington and Charlotte. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. Zach, your Twitter?
Zach K6, posting a lot of updates for more Oswego sports, but if you want to give me a follow, just hop on there. So,
and my Twitter, of course, is Ben_Kinney, WTOP. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Pitcast. For Zach Case, I'm Ben Kinney. Take care, folks.